Now, I'm going to talk about what is the most common topic in all of my films. So, for anyone who's had classes with me before, you're probably going to be like, oh no, Nick's talking about this again. That topic is the topic of me moving from Milwaukee to Horicon. I lived in Milwaukee my entire life from birth until I was 21 and then moved out to the country. So it was a switch from urban to rural. Living in Milwaukee, one of the biggest cities in the country, 25,000 people to Horicon, which only has 3,000 people. A big difference. It was the biggest change in my life, even going to a public high school after being homeschooled my whole life was not as big of a change as this was. But the way that I'm going to talk about this today is from a different angle from how I usually talk about it. Usually I focus on my new house and how much I love it. But today I want to talk about what I miss about the old house and do a little bit of reminiscing. For instance, I miss living in a neighborhood. I miss being able to walk around on sidewalks. It's so crazy to say that I can't do that anymore where I live. But really, I miss walking my dog on sidewalks. I miss riding my bike around on sidewalks. I miss the community of being able to go past 20 neighbors' houses and, knowing all of them. I miss how many other people had dogs in the neighborhood. And it's like where I live now, I know a lot of the other people have dogs, but like you don't see them out walking around. Your dogs don't run into each other because things are so much more secluded out in the country. I do love the feeling of being out in the middle of nowhere in the country. I kind of have the feeling of being out in the middle of nowhere in the country. However, I live on a busy highway where the speed limit is 55 miles an hour, and that can kind of take away from the feeling of seclusion. I felt more out in the open in the city and more in the middle of nowhere in the country, but it's weird. It's like at the same time, I felt more secluded in the city, like I was secluded with other people in my neighborhood versus the random people who drive past my house now at 55 miles an hour. The old neighborhood I lived in, I would have lived on a street that was 25 miles an hour, but people were usually driving slower than that. So it's like that brought more, like, not peace, but slowness to it. So I miss that. And I miss the visuals of, I guess, all these houses being lined up together. And don't get me wrong, I much prefer where I live now, where I have a bigger yard and I'm further away from, where there's more nature to look at than man-made things, is essentially what I'm trying to say. There's more trees to look at in the country than there are houses. So I do like where I live now better, but I won't deny that there are things I miss about Milwaukee, and specifically my neighborhood, which was called Harder's Oaks. And I think looking ahead to moving prior to when the move happened, I was expecting to miss my old house much more than I am now. And I don't know that I was expecting to like my new house so much better. But again, I don't want to take away from the memories that I had at the old house for 21 years. So in the country, I have found a new sense of community, but it's not as close as the city. I found a new sense of home, yet I feel far from home, far from my old home, the only place I had called home for 21 years. I found peace in the country, but I miss the peace of socializing, which sounds like a paradox. But really, yeah, I miss the peace of socializing with neighbors in the city. And that doesn't mean that doesn't happen in the country, but it's just different now. It's like all the same things that happened in the city happen in the country to an extent, but in a different way. It's the same, but different.